Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. Today we are reviewing the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 prime lens for Fujifilm. Although Viltrox was kind enough to send us a copy of this lens, like always, this review is completely unbiased. I'm not being paid by Viltrox to do this review. This is one of 3 Viltrox prime lenses for Fujifilm. I've previously reviewed the other 2. That would be the 33mm f1.4 and the 85mm f1.8. If you would like to see those reviews, I will have a link in the description below. This new Viltrox 23mm lens is about $330. That puts it at $50 more expensive than the 33mm Viltrox. But it's $70 less expensive than the 85mm Viltrox. Okay, let's open this up and see what you get. Nice solid box, instructions, and one of those awesome gray bags that you never quite know what to do with. And then there's the lens itself. So right off the bat, this is an all metal construction, very nicely built lens. I love how they designed this all metal lens hood. The way it fits right on with just a beautiful, nice little click into place. The lens weighs 260 grams, or just over half a pound. It feels nice and light on the camera, and I would have no problem taking it anywhere. This would be a great budget travel prime lens. There are 11 elements of glass contained in 10 groups, and this lens has a 52mm filter size on it. The manual focus is focus by wire. The minimum focus distance is 30 centimeters, which is about 1 foot. And lastly, it has a built-in USB port so that you can easily plug in a USB cable and update the firmware of the lens. For this video, I did test with firmware version 1.06. And I know what you're all thinking. Am I nuts? Is this gonna fall? Probably not a good idea to dangle it. Let's talk minimum focus distance for a minute. Here's the minimum focus distance using the Fuji 23mm, and here's the minimum focus distance you get with the Viltrox 23mm. As you can see, there's no doubt about it. You can get a lot closer with the Fuji. However, I found that the Viltrox was so sharp in the center that I was able to just crop in to get an image like this. And as you can see cropped in, the Viltrox is on the left, the Fuji is on the right. The sharpness for the Viltrox holds beautifully. Because I found the Viltrox to generally be sharper toward the center, I simply ended up cropping in post-production, and for myself, it really wasn't a big deal. However, this would not be the lens to use for macro photography, and you should be aware that it does have a further minimum focus distance than you would find on an equivalent prime Fuji lens of similar focal length. In continual autofocus, when you have this set to C, I found that the autofocus speed to be on par with both the 23mm Fuji as well as the 33mm Viltrox. I found that the autofocus on the Viltrox to be extremely fast and responsive. I then tested face-eye auto tracking in both stills and video mode. For stills photography, it was great. It kept up with the subject moving their head around. It did get tripped up a little when they looked down, but overall it functioned exactly as I would have expected it to. I did notice that when the subject sort of moved to the side edge of the frame, the lens face-eye auto detect sort of lost it for a minute and then regained it. It did that more with the Viltrox than it did with the Fuji lens, I noticed. For video face-eye auto detection, I tested this lens against both the Viltrox 33mm as well as the Fujinon 23mm and found that they all worked equally fast if the subject was more or less in the center of the frame. One thing I did notice is that if the subject moved toward the edge of the frame, there was less tolerance on the Viltrox to keep that face-eye auto detect than the Fuji, meaning the Fuji stayed with the subject more if the subject got closer to the edge of the frame. Overall, I found that this lens takes some very sharp images with beautiful color saturation. While I found myself glad that I had f1.4 for that, that extra light, I actually preferred the look of f2 on this lens. As when it's opened up to f1.4, it's almost like it creates a 3D picture with your subject. And even if you're not opened all the way up to f1.4, the images still pop out from the background. And I think that looks great. I think the background bokeh looks better on the Viltrox 23mm than on the Fuji 23mm f2. Have a look at this. Okay, the image on the left is the Viltrox 23mm. The image on the right is the Fuji. Again, this is always subject to interpretation, right? I mean, you can't really hold a scientific standard for bokeh. This looks almost a little too harsh, the one on the Fuji. You see that right there? Now, if you go up here, yeah, you look at this, they're just nicer on the Viltrox. And overall, I like how it pulls the subject out more at f2 than the Fuji lens did at f2. One thing to note about the bokeh is that it can be a little swirly in the background. If you look over at the background, it's just a little bit on the the swirly side. And speaking of sharpness, what would be an awesome lens review video without a brick wall? Let's go there. Okay, at f1.4, there is definitely softness at the center and some vignetting as well. Speaking of vignetting, I can see it right here. This is at f2.0. Look at the corner. There is vignetting, as you can see. Just click on lens corrections. I do custom right here. And then where it says vignetting, I sort of just pull that like that. No more vignetting. Okay, so the softness goes away by about the time you get to f2.8. And as you continue to stop down the lens, the center gets nice and sharp. Then once you hit about f11, the center starts to get a little soft again, with the softness becoming more noticeable when you hit f16. Same thing goes with the corners. At f16, you definitely see some softness. And then of course at f14, the softness is there as well. One thing I did notice is that the center on the 23mm Viltrox is a bit softer at f16 than the 33mm Viltrox. And I did find more chromatic aberration on the 23mm Viltrox versus the 33mm Viltrox. Speaking of chromatic aberration, while I definitely saw it evident at f1.4 and even at f2, it seemed to mostly be gone by f2.5. I also noticed some flaring. It wasn't a huge deal, but keep that in mind as well. One issue I want to talk to you about with this lens has to do with the aperture ring. This is a stepless aperture, meaning there's no clicking or stops between each aperture setting. It's one fluid motion when you turn it, which means in theory that it should be very, very quiet and beneficial, right? You don't want it to go click, 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 click in your audio as you're shooting your video. So I have seen a number of YouTube videos mentioning that this is a great lens for video because of a clickless aperture ring being very quiet. However, they don't always mention, and you have to factor in the noise of the autofocus motor, which you can hear in the audio if you're recording off the built-in camera mic. However, aperture ring noise benefit aside, I don't think this is an ideal lens for video. First off, I found it very easy, in fact, too easy, to accidentally knock the aperture ring and change the aperture ring settings. You know, when you're out and you're shooting video, a lot is happening very quickly, and it's so easy to knock the ring around and change your exposure. Now, one workaround I found to fix this problem is to put the aperture ring in A. Like if you put it in automatic, it sort of kind of holds it into place, and then you can set the Fujifilm camera to control your aperture using the front command dial. The way you do that is real simple. You press and hold down the front command dial for a couple of seconds until you get this screen here and verify that it is set to F aperture, just like that. Next, go into your settings under the wrench, button dial setting, and drop down to where it says aperture ring setting A, and make sure it's in command. And now you can simply change the aperture by rotating the front command dial, just like this. The second reason it's not an ideal lens for video is in how the lens communicates with the camera. The Viltrox lens is not a purely manual lens. One of the great benefits of it is that it has autofocus. So it uses these sensors right here. And you want that for things like autofocus and face-eye auto tracking and EXIF data and that kind of thing. It's awesome for that. But because it's not a manually adjusted set of aperture blades, you know, when you go to rotate the aperture dial, the exposure changes while you're doing that. Well, have a look at this. This is video shot with the Viltrox 23mm, and all I was doing was rotating the aperture ring, and as you can see, it's a jerky motion of light changes. Again, that's because the lens is communicating to the camera via an electronic connection. Like, okay, I just made a change from f5.6 to f8. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Hey, nothing's too good for a wonderfully exposed shot, right? You see that? When you rotate the opening, it gets wider and then smaller, exactly mirroring what you are doing with your hands in a smooth motion. However, most videographers are not going to be using this type of lens anyway for video, nor are they going to be modifying the aperture in this manner very often. However, I did want to point out this issue to you because the benefits of having a smooth, stepless aperture ring with regard to shooting video via an electronically controlled aperture on the lens are canceled out by the jump in exposure. Having now used and tested all three Viltrox lenses, I can say without hesitation that this 23mm is my absolute favorite of them. I think Viltrox hit a home run with this lens, given the price, the features, the quality of the images, the useful in so many situations focal length of 23mm, and the speed of the autofocus. For $330, I think this lens has something for everyone, even video shooters, if you're willing to work around the stepless aperture ring limitations that I mentioned. And so, nice job on this, Viltrox. I now put before you a challenge. You know, you've made three very impressive budget Fujifilm third-party prime autofocus lenses. How about a Viltrox zoom lens for Fuji? In the meantime, I will have a link down below so that you can download and review some of the straight out of the camera raw files that I shot with this Viltrox lens. And lastly, I want to thank someone who was instrumental in helping me with this video. Cameron, as in Cameron, my son. He helped shoot a number of the test footage, behind the scenes pieces, some of the drone shots, some of the comparison stuff. He carted gear, he brought tripods in and out, he put equipment away, he helped clean stuff up. Thank you, Cameron. You rock. And you made my putting together this video a lot of fun and really awesome. Great job, son. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it the like and subscribe, and I will see you in another video very soon. Take care. Okay, let's open it up and see what you get. Okay, speed, and I love your idea with this. Keep it going, not so fast on the pull-ins. Yeah, move it slowly. So that's good. We'll do, oh, that's HDR. That's why. Okay, there's that. Okay, so you always check your, gotta always check your settings. Oh, no, you could do better than that. You can do better than that. Go back further. Toward you, yeah.